Well, this episode had a turn that I wasn't expecting. Who I thought the Fatefuls might go for before the start of the episode wasn't the actual target, and it all started with who the traitors picked to be the fourth Fateful murdered. We know it was between Charlotte, David and Kate, with Kate being the less likely of the three to be banished next. Before the reveal, I thought Charlotte would be a nailed-on favourite for banishment, and the Fatefuls' discussion at breakfast confirmed she would face some scrutiny. When I saw Alan grinning as they were discussing Charlotte, I thought it was Charlotte who had been murdered, and indeed she was. There was at least 4 of the Fatefuls who probably would have voted for Charlotte that night. The traitors keep murdering outspoken players, and in the case of both Charlotte and Tom, 2 Fatefuls who look to be odds-on candidates to be banished. They have baffled the Fatefuls. They've kept them guessing, and they keep guessing wrong. As the episode went on, I thought this would be no different, as the Fatefuls raised Jonathan's name but then honed in their suspicions in another direction. Nick is speculating about Kat being a traitor, but is keeping that card firmly to his chest. Mark's work at playing dodgy characters is starting to catch up with him as suspicions grow against him, citing his reactions to be forced and put on. David, coming to the conclusion that he thinks Marla is a traitor, has now got Wilkinson thinking David is a traitor. Suspicions were back on Kate because she questions everyone about who they think are traitors, but never gives names herself. Something I alluded to in a previous video about her relying too heavily on others to then cast her vote, which means she can be someone that's more easier to manipulate than others. Before we got to the round table, there was a mission that would end up with a few players in booby traps. Each round they needed to answer a question about one of the eliminated players. Each trap had answers they needed to pick and make sure they chose the correct trap with some of the bags of money they could win. If they were incorrect, then they were out of the mission and the money they had with them is lost. If they were in the correct trap, then the money they have goes towards the prize fund and the player in the correct trap gets a shield. The player's strategy was to spread the money on the first 2 questions, but they were very bold for the question on Charlotte Church. I thought the answer was 13, and it was what I thought before the possible answers were shown. If I was in the game, then I would be incorrect. They went with 12 and they were correct. Nick, Lucy, David and Jonathan were on the correct answers and won a shield each. Jonathan proved to be very useful with the 3rd and 4th question, the perks of being an interviewer. £7,000 was banked for the prize fund, which took the current total to £38,500. Seeing the conversations before and after the missions, it felt that once again the Fatefuls weren't going to catch a traitor. At the round table, fingers were being pointed in all directions bar a couple of players. Mark faced a lot of scrutiny, mainly by Marla and also Alan. This was the most that Alan has gone for someone at the round table. I mean, it was a very good theory, and I could see someone else being slightly suspicious of the fact Mark is a huge fan of the show but didn't want to be a traitor. Like some others, Alan was taking a different course in round table strategy. We finally got some names out of Kate, and it was Nick and Mark that got it out of her. I've seen some traitors play the clueless role often, so I can't blame anyone for thinking it's Kate. At least this time the suspicions have nothing to do with how theatrical Kate's reactions are. It's been a while since we've heard Kate repeat what someone else has said but do it louder. All throughout the roundtable discussions, I wasn't sure where the majority of the votes were going, as each player was saying more than one name as a suspect. It had me thinking that whoever would be banished would be on a low vote, like Tamika was with 4 votes. This was the most we've seen of all the players talking. It felt like this might have been a longer set of discussions shown, but I haven't timed any of them, so I may just be pulling that out of thin air. There were a vote each for Jonathan and Stephen, while Kate got 2, but the main recipients of the votes were David and Mark. It was tense when it came to Kat, who had the last vote, as a vote for anyone but David would see Mark banished. Kat ended up making it a tied vote between Mark and David by casting a vote for David. Our first tied vote for the season, but as it turned out, it wouldn't be the last. With Mark and David unable to vote and the others only able to vote for Mark and David, we once again had the situation where the last vote could tie things or Mark would be banished. Celia had the final vote, and I thought production were going to have a cliffhanger before her vote was revealed. We got another tie as Celia voted for David, And then that was it. Cliffhanger activated. I'm still annoyed by the cliffhanger of episode 2, but this is what I think is a good use of a roundtable cliffhanger. This or one last vote to break a tie is my ideal way of having a cliffhanger at the roundtable. With a double tied vote, the banished player's fate will be decided by chance. What we don't know is what will that moment of chance be. If they had followed some other versions, then another tied vote would make everyone re-vote, but they couldn't vote for the two that were tied. Or there's another way that was used where they combined all of the votes the players had in all of the roundtables, and the one that had the most during the season was banished. Whichever way it goes will be slightly disappointing for the banished faithful. I can't wait for the next episode, and I'm glad it's airing the following day and not in a week's time.